Hi, everyone. It's Carol here from Tapping Into Sleep, and we're here for another amazing interview. And I think this is one of the ones I've been the most excited about. I want to present to you Nancy Forrester. She is the CEO and founder of the National EFT Training Institute in Canada, and we actually call that Neftti. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Carol. Such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think what I learned in Neftti is and what we called conscious EFT is
Mhm.
how we can use EFT or tapping to change the relationship with something. And I
Mhm.
think in one of the courses that we were in together, you as the teacher, me as the student, it just came like, wow, the relationship with
Mhm.
sleep, because I was helping people with sleep. And the
Yeah.
three ways or the three pillars of
Mhm.
how it all goes together. So I'm
Mhm.
excited for this talk.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So shall we
Yeah.
dive right in, or can I just say, that I'm one of the reasons I'm excited to have this conversation with you is because, you are just such a beautifully engaged learner. Like when you were doing your advanced level to lead to your master certification as a conscious EFT practitioner, it's like you just lapped up everything. And this insight you're talking about relationship with sleep, that was just, a real, almost a metaphor of how you approach the learning. So it's just a delight to
Yeah.
spend time with you.
Oh, awesome. And I love that. So my first question though, before we get into anything is Nefty,
Yeah.
because we talk about conscious EFT. And
Mhm.
so, there's EFT tapping out in the world, but now we talk
Mhm.
about conscious EFT. So
Mhm.
how is that different? And what's your approach and like what's Nefty's approach?
Oh gosh, it's a
Big
huge
question.
question. Yeah, so let me say a little bit and then you come in and tell me if I'm on track or not. So my history with EFT was back in the mid 90s, and I'd been a psychotherapist for quite a few years. But I'd been before that an academic. I'd been out in the world in different ways before I became a therapist. And I had some struggle with psychotherapy as I was being trained to do it because it seemed quite limited to me. I would,
Mhm.
at that point in time, we were doing only talk therapy. And I could see some ways that talk therapy was actually being harmful, like for people to be repeating the same
Yeah.
stories over and over again. And it really wasn't helping them. And so then I got invited to an EFT workshop, and I had no idea what this was. I mean, we barely had the internet or email in the mid 90s. And I'm going, I got this email, but I went. And it was a little bit bizarre because people were tapping on the acupressure points, which was really woohoo at the time.
Yeah.
No research at all at that time. But I had this really profound experience. And it was around compassion for my mother. Now, my mom was a fabulous mom in terms of providing physically for me and making sure there was a roof over my head, but emotionally she
Mm.
didn't have the capacity to be with me. And so it was a little, emotionally um barren, I'll
Yeah.
say, right? And
Yeah.
so I had this amazing experience of compassion toward my mother that I'd never ever had before, despite years of therapy and personal growth. So I knew there was something to it right off the bat. And so I dove in and I really educated myself. And as I did that, I fell in love with
Yes.
EFT. Still to
Yes.
this day, my relationship with EFT is very, very romantic. But I also saw that there were some ways that it didn't feel in alignment with me. It felt like I was doing things that could potentially be harmful to clients. And
Okay.
so I sat in that dissonance for a number of years as I just sorted out what is it that is actually not sitting well with me about foundational EFT. And as I came to understand more and more about that, that's when conscious EFT
Evolved. Yeah.
really, really downloaded. And I continue to this day, 2012 was the founding of the National EFT Training Institute, but I continue to do to this day to see ways where EFT can follow an evolutionary path, which is so exciting about EFT, that it doesn't have to stay just a modality where you tap on your face. It is a profound transformational philosophy of human change.
Oh, it certainly is, because like, as you were sharing how EFT changed your life with the compassion for your mom.
Right.
I remember not having slept for years.
Right.
And actually having to be off work and taking sleeping pills, which was the only way my body would fall asleep. Yeah. And I remember finding tapping and trying it out. And I remember waking up on the couch. Oh. That moment that I woke up was, I realized I had fallen asleep on my own, which hadn't happened in over 2 years. And I was hooked. I was like, I've been tapping on my face, looking like a monkey, going and like hiding from everybody, because I'm like, if my husband saw me do this, he would say, what are you doing? But I was desperate to find relief for my sleep.
Yes.
I wanted a different relationship with my sleep. I didn't use those words back then, but and once I started tapping, I, like you, got hooked, and then found Neftti and got hooked even more. And so in Neftti, we talk a lot about like the pyramid of aspect is what you've named it, but really it's like the 3 pillars, and another word we could use. Those are kind of the 3 pillars I use with my sleep program, as in looking at these 3 different areas.
Yes.
And so why don't you talk to us about those 3 pillars and how you see conscious EFT and how it relates to sleep?
Yeah. Well, let me start to celebrate what you're saying about relationship with. I love the work you're doing, relationship with sleep. Sleep is so foundationally important. Sleep touches every other piece of life, right? And so when we're not having successful sleep, we're also feeling that impact all over the place. And so looking at our relationship with sleep is so profound, because we are relational beings. That's who we are. We are built as social creatures. We have evolved. Our biology has a relational orientation. So at Neftti, we talk about relationship with everything. We are in relationship with everything. In fact, we are in an energetic relationship with everything, right? So I love your 3-pillar approach to doing sleep success, because as a human being, I have more than one pillar of experience.
We do.
Right? And traditional coaching, traditional therapy tends to focus in on 1, maybe 2 of those channels. So talk therapy, for example, focuses in on what we call the cognitive channel, which is the thoughts, the beliefs, all of those racing thoughts that we get in our mind. And that's good. That's a really, really important pillar. And I know that's a pillar of your work, but it's not the only one.
No.
And so when we bring a holistic, humanistic approach to change, we have to consider all the ways we experience our humanness. So yes, we have the thoughts, we have the beliefs, but we also have the emotional channel.
Yes.
Right? And when you're having sleep issues, that emotional channel can get very, very activated, and people don't know how to calm that down. Right?
No. And that emotional channel, I see 2 sides of that emotional channel under that pillar. There's the stress and the anxiety and the emotions about your lack of sleep.
Yes.
And then you also have to look at the emotions and the stress of your daily life. And so that emotional channel is, I don't want to say it's the biggest of my work, but it's a huge, all 3 are important, but that is, you really have to learn to regulate your nervous system, reduce your emotional charge. Really, that's an important part. And that's where the tapping comes in for me.
Absolutely. Because tapping with conscious EFT, I mean, now we have over 200 studies that support what emotional freedom techniques tapping does in your biology. And that's what Conscious EFT is obsessed about, is human biology, right? So whereas, traditional coaching kind of looks at what are your goals for the future and how are we going to help you get there? And traditional therapy looks at what happened in your past. This new evolution of human change doesn't look at either of those. It looks at the commonality in all of that, which is the body. And so it taps into, pun intended, it taps into the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of the nervous system, and how do we support it at any given moment in time, because your nervous system knows how to sleep.
It does. Right? I say this so often, we are biologically wired to sleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And not to put blame on what we're doing, but if we start changing our mindset and we start regulating our nervous system and we do the behaviors that we need to, sleep will come back.
Absolutely.
But we need to change in order to get sleep to come back. But once you get that, like when I work with people, once they get that, oh, if I didn't do this, or if I did this, and if I thought this way, and if I tap 5 minutes a day, I could sleep again. And they just do.
Exactly. And it's the power of your approach. When you look at the relationship that we have with sleep, then you can look at how the goal is not to create sleep. That's already done for us. But the goal is to remove the blocks to the possibility of sleep. And that's where your 3 pillars come in, right? Part of that is going to be the thoughts, the racing thoughts, and how do you help people reduce that? Also the emotional piece of that, all kinds of examples of the kinds of emotions that would be blocks to successful sleep. It could be something also in the sensory area, where people who are having chronic pain, for example, that is a block to sleep. So you help them to actually reduce that sensation of pain in order that they can sleep. And then your 3rd pillar, of course, being behavioral habits. Like, oh my gosh, we just get into some really, like, can I say, shitty habits that we
can.
Right? Expect the nervous system to somehow get over the fact, ignore the fact that I, just ate 4 slices of pizza and then tried to go to sleep immediately. That, like, me.
And so, when I started studying sleep and behaviors and all that, and I was like, I had to tap on the shame of like drinking 5-6 coffee a day up till like 6 p.m. and then choosing to drink 2 glasses of wine so that I could sleep. And like when I read that caffeine stays, like 50% of the caffeine stays in your brain for like 8 hours after you had that cup of coffee, I was like, oh, I'm just trying to sleep with 2 cups of coffee in my brain.
Right.
And then I'm having alcohol thinking that's going to put me to sleep. But all I'm doing is fragmenting my sleep.
Exactly.
Like, so I don't sleep because.
Right. And sometimes it can be that simple, right? Just a little piece of awareness. Change the habit, right? Which is not always an easy thing to do, to change a well-established habit.
No.
But that's where Conscious EFT comes in. The tapping actually starts to open up the system to make change possible. And so that's what's so exciting, I think, about your work, is that really small little awarenesses, small little changes just lead to tremendous change in life.
And I find in my work, yes, I bring in a lot of tapping, a lot of Conscious EFT. I do a lot of education with people on it's normal to wake up through the night. Most people think if they wake up once, then they're done. And it's the minds then that come. So it's the belief. So having the education behind it, that we wake up 5 to 6 times in a night. It's just the sleeper doesn't really know.
Right, exactly.
The next morning. But if you identify, if you have the identity belief of a poor sleeper, you wake up, then you're like, oh, for the love of God, here's another bad night's sleep. So there's the thought channel, and then the emotion channel comes in. I'm so frustrated. And the
Yeah.
behavior channel comes in because now I'm going to lay here awake and I'm going to choose to stew and not do anything about it. And so
Exactly.
once they understand that, like it really needs the three pillars. You can't do this work without looking at all three. And and that became very clear.
Yeah. And you asked me at the start, what is it that conscious EFT brings to the table that perhaps wasn't part of the original EFT? And oh my gosh, blessings to our founder, Gary Craig. He just, what he has given us is changing the world. And so conscious EFT is an evolution of this as we learn more about neurobiology, which we simply didn't know in the mid-90s. And then EFT is able to adapt to that. It's like the more I learn about EFT, I think the deeper I fall into it. But what I was going to say is that one of the benefits of conscious EFT is that you can work in different stages. So at the first stage, it's a beautiful modality for stress management, for symptom management, like the chronic pain or perhaps the emotional pain. So symptom management, and also working with current issues. So, someone who is just super stressed at work, the demands far exceed the capacity for them to actually deliver. And so that's really the first stage, but it doesn't stop there, right? And this is what you as a master practitioner know how to do, is you know how to use conscious EFT to open up the subconscious pieces of why a person may not be feeling safe to fall asleep. There can be all kinds of reasons why a nervous system would be thinking it's not such a good idea to fall asleep, right? And none of them are really going to be conscious awareness. It's all going to be just stuff that's brewing underneath the surface. And with your skills, that you can help people get to that deeper, really transformational piece.
Yeah, because conscious EFT really taught me to work in the present moment first.
Yeah.
Regulate your nervous system today. So, it's I think the first session with any new client is, here's my video on external orienting tapping.
Yeah.
And just do that for 5 minutes a day, just to orient yourself to the safety of the room you're in.
Absolutely.
Unless there's a fire, then get out of the house. Right?
Like fire, flood, like, those real physical acts of God. Yeah. It's like, but we're not going to stay tapping.
No, get out of the way. But if you're really safe, but you feel unsafe, let's just start orienting you and teaching your nervous system what safety feels like.
Absolutely.
And what I hear a lot through the night is, well, I don't hear it through the night, but people experience through the night is uncomfortable with the silence. Right. It's not safe for me to go to sleep now. And it's amazing the amount of people that it's because in childhood it wasn't safe to go to sleep. And we're like 30 years later and it's still there.
Exactly.
But that is deep work that can only be done as we progress and get you comfortable today. You can't go there right away. And
this is a big premise of conscious EFT is that the work has to be conducted in safety.
Yeah.
So here we are trying to retrain our nervous system into its capacity to move out of its defensive stances, its fight, flight, and freeze responses. We're trying to retrain it from there into this beautiful social engagement system where we can just relax and allow nature to take its course. But in order to do that, we have to be able to create the safe environment for that to happen. And beautifully said, that's where the external orientation comes in too, because that is where the safety is. When there's a lack of safety internally, right, then we can go to where the safety is, which is externally, right? How is this world showing up to me in this moment? Right? Like sitting here with you having this wonderful conversation, the sun is shining through my window and the world is showing up to me by the warmth on my hands.
Right. And it's so amazing because I am someone who ruminates and, well, in the past, and my mind would be constantly going and I would be thinking of the worst case scenario and this person said this and that said that. And I would go to bed and then it's like, I would stew on a conversation that happened like 20 years ago, and it would
Yeah,
come back
exactly.
in the middle of the night. And since I
Yeah,
started doing conscious EFT and I started looking at how am I feeling, why am I thinking of that? And
right.
I would just then start saying, I'm comfortable. And I love putting my hands on my heart. And I would just
Yeah,
say, no, right here, right now, I'm safe. And I
yeah.
repeat that over and over.
Hmm.
I have less of those moments. And when my brain starts going now, it's like, oh, what am I going to create next? Oh, I'm working on a big project. And so my whole energy has shifted.
Absolutely.
And it changes someone's life. And not only do I
Yeah.
sleep really well,
Hmm.
95% of the time, because we cannot, well, maybe you can expect 100% sleep, but the reality is there's stressful events that's going to happen.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
conscious EFT allows you to
Yeah.
deal with those events. So I guess that just brought up another point about tapping with me that has shifted since I started training with Neftti is I always wanted to tap to get the feelings to go away. And so
Exactly.
what I've learned is we use tapping in order to help us manage our days,
Right.
in order
Right.
to feel safe in the present moment,
Hmm.
so that we
Hmm.
can look at the relationship that I'm having right now, either with myself or with a member of my family or with my sleep
Yeah.
or with my work, and then
Right.
decide and choose the relationship that I want.
Yes.
Brings a lot of
Yes.
clarity to how you
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and if I can get a little theoretical on you
Yeah,
here,
you can.
right? We live in a culture where we have been conditioned to
Mhm.
pay attention to what's wrong.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what we do over and over and over again. That's what our ruminating thoughts are, paying attention to what's wrong over and over and over. We're quite addicted to this idea of paying attention to what's wrong. And so conscious EFT starts there, right? And in the first phase of the work, it really starts to open up the pyramid that you talked about, and leave some space for
Mm.
something other than the addiction to what's
Yes.
wrong. And that space is pleasure, it's fun,
Yeah.
it's enjoyment. So that's
Yes.
another thing I love about your work, is that you get this, is that yes, of course, people are coming to you and they're saying, I've got a real issue with sleep and I really need to fix this. And there's this desperate energy
Yes.
around
Yeah.
it. And you know how to work with it. Of course, we've got to start there, but it
Yeah.
doesn't stop there. Once that energy starts to settle down, then our whole being turns to the
Mm.
experience of connection and creativity and
Yeah.
calmness and pleasure and joy. And then
Yeah.
as that expands, then we get into this beautiful space of beingness. You know how the gurus are always saying, right? It's
Yeah.
be here now, be here now. But nobody ever says to you, that's a big deal. That is
Yeah.
a big deal, to take a nervous system from an addiction to what's wrong to an ability to just be, right? Just
Yeah.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
I find it
possibility.
so, I'm so grateful for the work that I've done, for the people that have been on my path, to say that I probably feel like I'm being a
Yeah.
lot more than I've ever been in
Hmm.
my life. And just that
Hmm.
ability just
Yeah.
then changes your life.
That's right. Where the doing comes
Yeah.
out of being.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do so much more. And so
Yeah.
that's where, when people are trying to not sleep in the evening because it's their only time to do stuff, and I've seen
Right.
this quite a bit where, the kids are in bed, they finally have the
Yeah.
house to themselves.
Yeah.
Now they're going to catch
Oh,
up on laundry and
exactly.
do all this, and they choose that over sleep. Um,
Hmm.
they just then get into that cycle of not enough sleep. And if they
Hmm.
chose being asleep, because being
Hmm.
asleep is so
Yeah.
rejuvenating, then
Yeah.
they would have
Yeah.
so much more energy to get the day done, and they could just
Or
replan
to
their
get
day,
to get the clarity around delegation.
right?
How
Setting
can I reduce the
boundaries.
number of things? Exactly.
Yeah. So Nancy, this was a beautiful conversation with you. What I'd like to talk about now, if it's okay with you, is what does
Hmm.
Neftti offer? So I know that not everybody wants to be certified and
Right.
become an EFT practitioner and
Right.
do this work. But what does Nancy, what does Neftti, Neftti, Nancy, same thing. What does Neftti offer to the general population and then for people who want to be certified?
Yeah, thanks. Of course, I'd love to talk about this. My
Mhm.
relationship with Neftti is very important to me.
Yes.
So, what we offer is sort of a graduated um,
Mm.
offerings to be able to come and work with us. So the first thing that you can do is a free series. It's the 5 video series where you can
Oh, yes.
you just sign up on the Neftti website, neftti.com. Make sure there's 2 T's and EFT.com.
I'll put the link in the description of this video
Awesome.
so they can
Yeah.
actually click on the link and go watch the free
Thanks,
series.
Carol. And that's a really nice introduction to Conscious EFT. So that's for everybody. Everybody's going to benefit from that. And then if you get hooked and you want some more, we've got a 9 series audio, which is a reasonable cost. It's been on special for a couple of years as we've been moving through what the last couple of years has had. And it is 9 audios that I do with a graduate of ours, Jen Sensurak, who's a doctor of, she's a naturopath. And it is also a really, really informative and helpful, a very practically based series to help people bring tapping into their life. And then, especially for the people who are already coaches, therapists, wellness practitioners, for example, or for people who just go, oh, like that's my calling. That's my calling. I really, really want to help people like you, right?
Yeah.
Those people who would like to be a coach or who might like to be a therapist, but they're aspiring, then they come into a program we call Discover the Power. And I love this program. It's been born out of my many, many years in academia and looking at what works for adult learning and what doesn't. So there's a pre-training program people do on their own beforehand, get a lot of the theory down pat, and then we come together for 3 days where we have emotional mentors. So we do a lot of dancing, a lot of weird stuff. And that's where we've been lucky to have you as an emotional mentor many times. But it's highly experiential. Like we do the work. We don't talk about it. We talk about it in the pre-training, but we do the work. And then there's a few phone calls afterwards to integrate, to help people bring this. So it doesn't, end up one more course on the shelf, but to bring that together. So that's our foundational training, Discover the Power. And then for people who really, really want to move on and get certified, we have a program called Harness the Power, which is a longer 10-month program, very small group, which looks at conscious EFT skills. It looks at professional practice skills. It looks at personal growth and evolution, because that's fundamental. And then it looks at professional competency too. So and anybody's interested, just reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat.
And what I'll share with people about all the training that I've done is one day me and my husband were talking about, all the time and money and everything that I've put into becoming certified as an EFT practitioner and then branching out into sleep. And we both agreed that even if I did not have a career out of this, the personal growth and the personal healing that I got through taking those trainings and practicing with different practitioners and exchanging sessions, my personal development, it's priceless. And so even if people wanted to take it and never, we need all the EFT practitioners in the world. We need everybody. But the personal and healing that you get from these trainings, I've never seen anything like it. And that to me I would do it all over again. And every time I'm like, okay, I reached a certain level and I think I'm good. And then I take another master, that master course, my advanced level. Oh my God, I leaped again in my personal healing. And I was like,
that's it. Right. And that's what you want in a helping professional, is you want someone who is dedicated to their own growth, to their own evolution, because it really is true that you can't take anybody anywhere where you haven't been yourself.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful gift you bring to your work, Carol, because you experienced insomnia. You know it from the inside out. And so not only then have you healed yourself and all of the contributing issues, but you've gone beyond that to really create programs and offer service to people that are second to none.
And it just lights me up every time I get an email or a client clicks on, is like, I slept 6 hours last night, Carol. And part of me goes, oh, we got to get you to 7.5, right? But the other part of me goes, yeah, but this person hasn't slept 6 hours in like years, and they're sleeping 6 hours without sleeping supplements, without anything. I just get so excited. Sometimes it's hard to contain my excitement, because I'm like, I'm put on this earth to like make the world sleep. That's my job. That's my mission. Like, let's get people sleeping.
Yeah. And that's the conscious EFT approach, right? It's founded in safety. Safety has to be there. But once the safety is there, the nervous system just wants to grow. It wants to evolve. It's built to do that. So once we take the blocks away, then, as you say, that evolution just happens.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. We will put all the links in the description. So, reach out. Neftti is amazing, and you don't have to be Canadian to train with Neftti. So that's another thing. Like it's all online, it's virtual. And even though it's online, it feels like you're right there with everybody. And Neftti has created such a beautiful community that everybody should join, is my belief. But so thank you. And to everybody else, if you would like a free copy of my guide, Journey to Better Sleep, 5 action steps to improve the quality of your sleep today, just click the link below. You just have to register, and I'll send you my free guide so that we can get you sleeping and on your journey to better sleep. Thanks, everyone.